Sega's 32x. Notorious, infamous, not famous, commonly believed to be a big pile of poop and a skid mark on Sega's console legacy. An add-on for the Mega Drive arriving after the failed Mega CD, an add-on for the Mega Drive, and only slightly before the actual proper console update in the shape of the Saturn. I mean, what could go wrong? How to explain the intricacies involved, how to surmise a complex situation in a simple YouTube audience-friendly way. Well, how about the 32X was absolutely fucked from the second it was announced? Sega literally said it overpromised and underdelivered with the machine, and that its confusing Bridging the Gap release made the company look greedy and dumb. This ain't your usual corporate doublespeak. See, the mushroom-shaped hat for your Mega Drive came with Sega's expectation you'd shell out £170 for it a mere 7 months before the company's actual successor, the Saturn, released. In fact, in Japan at least, the 32X came out after the Saturn. The add-on hit early December 1994, while the full, actual, separate console had arrived the month before. Hey guys, now that you bought your shiny new console and have started to get used to all the fabulous shiny new things it can do, including playing shiny Virtua Fighter until your shiny thumb blisters have shiny blisters, do you want to shell out another couple £100 on this Mega Drive cartridge with a tumour that can play, a scaled down version of Virtua Fighter? I mean, there's a gigantic rabbit hole to jump down if I wanted to get into Sega's cock-ups of the 90s. The 32X was just one of so many. But that's a monologue for another bored, rainy Saturday. No, today I want to ask a question and try to find an answer to something that I've wondered all of my adult life. An important question, and something we all should agree needs to be answered. The Watergate of Sega's console-making era, a question for the ages. Was the 32X actually shit? Even 20-odd years after it was released, and despite umming and ahhing over second-hand dusty mushrooms on eBay back in my uni days, I spent my student loan well, I have never owned a 32X. And so I didn't buy one to play the games. I cheated and used an emulator. As such, I didn't play every game in its full glory, as the likes of, oddly, NBA Jam Tournament Edition refused to work. Bit of a segue, I just looked at 2017's eBay prices for the 32X and its games, and holy Jesus crap and crikey, that thing has a fair bit of value these days. Idiot me in 2001 really should have taken the financial hit and swore off the blue WKDs for a couple of weeks to be able to afford one. The 32X. I sat down and played the majority of its games, which isn't hard, seeing as though in its short lifespan from 94 to 96, which is only about a year less than the original Xbox's run before the 360's release, Sega's Fungus-featured add-on had a total of 40 games. Even the Nokia N-Gage had more games for it released than that. It's not a positive start, is it? But hey, the games. I jumped first, he says, as if he didn't just dispassionately play through them all in alphabetical order, oh shit, I'm breaking the illusion, into the wild and wacky polygon explosion known as That £90 game on the Mega Drive, aka Virtua Racing. And, well, it set things up quite nicely. It's good. It's not arcade perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than that overpriced lump for the purebred Mega Drive. Not as smooth as my brain remembered, and what you could safely call bastard hard without a shadow of a doubt. Virtua Racing nonetheless impressed me, and had me playing it for a while. By a while, I mean a race or two. That's a while when you're sitting down playing games on an emulator for a bit. Stop trying to break the illusion. I have limited time, I can't be playing this crap all day every day as much as I want to. After that, I stuck with the V's and moved to Virtua Fighter, referred to by Next Generation magazine as the colourful wreath on the 32X's coffin, what with releasing so close to the add-on's death and all. And yeah, it's pretty great. It's one of the few games that actually took advantage of everything the 32X had to offer, something that wasn't rushed out and didn't feel like it had been cut just to meet deadlines. Virtua Fighter 32X is, dare I say, arguably better than the rush job that was Virtua Fighter on the Saturn. Come at me, bro, is that what you say? I think that's what you say there. This also admittedly breaks the joke I made earlier, but nobody's actually paying attention to that stuff, so everyone calm down and shut up please before I end up smashing your face into a Fighter is smooth, the combat is deeper than it first seems, everything just fits together nicely and works. It was a fine swan song for the 32X, even if nobody paid attention or really cared in the slightest. And it wasn't Virtua Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive, whatever the hell that thing was. Dear God. The other one on 32X everybody always talks about is Star Wars Arcade because it's Star Wars and it lets you do the Death Star run, basically. I remember playing this in an arcade somewhere in Tenerife as a kid and adoring it, and always wanting to have a version at home and never having a version at home, so maybe, perhaps, just a little bit, we all go a bit overboard when we talk about how great Star Wars Arcade on the 32X was and is. I mean, it is good though, isn't it? It fills that bit of our imagination that always had us as the heroic X-Wing pilot taking out the evil Empire once and for all, or until the next film. It's why Star Wars' arcade iterations, the X-Wing and TIE Fighter games, the Rogue Squadron games, most recently Battlefront's VR Star Wars demo, they've all hit that bit of our brains perfectly. Star Wars Arcade has a shit ton of issues, but it genuinely manages to bypass most critical faculties because 1, it's Star Wars, and 2, fuck off mate, it's Star Wars. Score 1 for the 32X. Booyah. There's also the 32X's exclusive Sonic game, which is so exclusive it isn't even a Sonic game. Knuckles Chaotix is hailed by some as the add-on's best game, while I just hail it as something I didn't get in the 20 minutes I put into it, and perhaps, just maybe, it's something that needs a bit more investment from me before I can really hit it with my opinion hammer. Failing that, because it's a bit wishy-washy and we all have to have concrete opinions on the interwebs, I thought it was a puzzle game with a daft gimmick, not a Sonic game. But then Sonic games are pretty shit in general, so there you go. I also want to throw in an honourable mention to Frontier's Dark Side, Dark X Side, Dark Chide, Dark X Side, whatever. It's asteroids in 3D, and it's technically very impressive given the hardware and limitations at play, with full texture map polygons, shut up, you're a nerd too, and fun, if simple and shallow shit to do. But, well, I'm being too positive about all of this. That or I've top-loaded this list with better games before pulling a Top Gear style, but actually, who knows? But actually, things do just go downhill from here, and it all starts with those pointless arcade ports. Virtua Fighter and Racing and Star Wars were the point-full arcade ports, great in many ways, though obviously not spot on to the machines they came from. Sega clearly wanted something that screamed arcade perfect, because this was back in the day when that was a thing that mattered, like today when idiots cry for weeks as something dropped a frame once ever and nobody even noticed it. So what did Sega do to make these arcade perfect delights? What did it use to wow the audience and make them go, hey, maybe this isn't just a quick fix hack job manufactured almost entirely to bring a bit of extra money out of me? Afterburner and Space Harrier. They're old games now, of course, but even when they were released on 32X, they were a mite crusty. Space Harrier was pushing a decade in 1994, while Afterburner was the ripe old age of 7. In fact, both games were so old, they hadn't even been released on the Mega Drive, their sequels had been. That makes them seem more pointful releases, being faithful arcade conversions of a couple of the most beloved of Sega's cabinet catalogue, but admitting that would take away from my point, so I won't. They're both great games, it just slaps you in the face as a bit utterly pointless to have both titles pop up on your hardware that's supposed to be heralding the arrival of a new generation of gaming. That'd be like releasing Cuba on the PS4, oh for fuck. And Mortal Kombat 2, hey, Mortal Kombat 2, the best home version of the game to come out in the 90s, apart from maybe the DOS version which nobody ever actually played because who bothered with Mortal Kombat on a PC in the 90s? Idiots, that's who. Yeah, Mortal Kombat 2 on 32X, correction to the earlier statement, is, yeah, this goes in the earlier list. Mortal Kombat 2 on the 32X is a great conversion. It's about as close to the arcade as you could hope for. It's still great fun. It's definitely better than the Mega Drive version. It's still a cheating shit. It's still home to the hold both low attack buttons and uppercut for a cheap and easy fatality on the first stage. It's good stuff. It's not exactly unique stuff, but it is good stuff. It was at this point I became a man struck with surprise, as though I'd just bumped into Brian Blessed in the street and spilled hot coffee down my shirt before the diminutive bellowing Thesp kegged me and ran off giggling. The 32X had quite a lot of good games. Maybe the rumours were wrong. Perhaps folks took it too far. Perchance the naysayers were those who we should say nay to. Nah. Absolutely not. As is inevitable in all things, the good came to an end and the bad began to take over. I won't say all the games that follow are shite, but I will say none of them impressed me in any real way, apart from maybe Blackthorn, but also I didn't play that nearly enough to know if it's actually as grand as it might have been pretending to be, or not. Wrestling is as close to my heart as Mr. Perfect's singlet was to his nipples, because I'm a dickhead. So obviously WWF Raw and WrestleMania the arcade game were high up in my bet they're still cool list, which is a list we definitely all have. So imagine my feigned surprise when I saw that in fact Raw was nigh on exactly the same as the Mega Drive version. Try and tell them apart, you can't. WrestleMania, meanwhile, could have been impressive, and compared to the Mega Drive version this time, it is. But it released around the same time as the PlayStation version, and when you're competing with something that is genuinely arcade perfect, you can't look anything other than a bit shonky. Plus it's a shit game, but don't tell that to me 20 odd years ago because I used to like it. Idiot. Brutal is one of the worst things I've ever been near, and a good example of why all video games should have been burned down in the early 90s, while BC Racers is a good reason to give up on all of humanity as we know, or don't know it. Awful, terrible wastes of time that show nothing even remotely good about the 32X and its ability to entertain. A lot of my unique brand of ire, however, is saved up for Doom on 32X, the smooth and sexy home console version that showed those PC-owning buffoons that we in filthy console land could also get their best game running brilliantly, if you ignore the fact that it runs in a window you can't change the size of, and that about a third of its levels were cut so it could get the game to market at 32X's launch. So yeah, it was a vaguely smooth version of Doom on console, far silkier than the treacle-coated but ever-impressive SNES version, but it was stripped down and undoomed. You undoom something, you're doomed to fail. Doom! I mentioned Blackthorn before, and actually all I'm doing here is bringing it up again, both as a reminder to myself to use the footage of it I grabbed, and to show that I did play it beyond the first screen. It doesn't belong in the bad games bit at all, but what else am I going to do? Play the thing? Ha! No, better to stick with slating sub-road rash levels of shite like motocross, which lulled me into such a waking coma I almost didn't notice this giant woman stood at the side of the track with her animated breasts. You don't get that kind of highbrow art in your Forza Horizons and your Gran Turismos, let me tell you. FIFA 96 is a fine testament to just why EA Sports is at the absolute top when it comes to the football genre, with the game featuring such features as whatever this crap is. A target reticule for throw-ins, some god-awful animation, and me being able to score a goal after running around in circles for ages and while not really paying attention. It's in the game. You also got less cut and dry badness. That isn't really badness, but I've said badness 2 or 3 times now, so it's in the badness set 4. It's in the badness 5 section, so it has to be included now. Pitfall the Mayan adventure. Great game, you know? Classic platformer. Alright, not stunning, but good fun and a great update on the ancient original. Runs delightfully on the 32X, it looks lovely, it has some fine animations and... Wait, shit, sorry, I was showing you the Mega Drive version there. Right, this is it. Smooth and flowing, colourful and fun, full of monkeys to throw rocks at and all that classic 90s platformer stuff. No, this is the SNES version, my mistake. Here we are with the 32X version, as well as the point I'm making. It ain't much of a step up from the vanilla console versions to the supposedly upgraded version. Imagine you just paid 200 quid for the add-on and game and you're showing it off to your peasant friends with a big grin on your face, and they have versions as good as yours on their pauper machines. I mean, that just sums up the 32X really. Primal Rage is just shit. Nothing much to add there. Here's the Mega Drive version, not much of a step up on the 32X, mainly because the game is arse. I cannot believe I made my mum stand and watch me playing this in the arcade 20 odd years ago. She did put up with some idiocy from young me. So jumping from claymation dinosaurs to pixelated starships, Star Trek Starfleet Academy Starship Bridge Simulator, the game with the name that just doesn't care, and another one to add to the not a bad game, just a thoroughly unimpressive accomplishment pile. I mean, this is a SNES game on the 32X that runs a tiny bit better. Starts to feel like Sega's add-on was designed solely to demonstrate to the Mega Drive owners of the world that what they should have gone with was Nintendo's console from day one. Would you be impressed with this game? Yes, a bit. Would that impressness stick when your Pitfall grinning SNES-owning mate also reveals he has this game and it runs about as well on his much cheaper, much older hardware? Yeah, not so much. And you wonder why this bloody thing failed. And finally, because I don't want to talk about Cosmic Carnage, or the game which is just Echo the Dolphin but you're a hummingbird that can fire lasers, I'm not joking, T-Mech and Metalhead. Because first-person future tank robot things were all the rage back in the 90s, and T-Mech doubled down on the all the rage thing by also being born of a VR arcade game. They're both fine. Absolutely fine. But also absolutely nothing to get excited about, especially as neither has the Crazy Ivan intro sequence.
Ignition, he's too early.
I knew it! We are going to die!
All it needs is bad Russian accent, man. Then we'd be sorted. Said it's serviceable first-person shooters, very much of their time, and absolutely no compelling reason whatsoever to pick them up. Which, you know, would have been helpful for the 32X, because without compelling reason to pick its games up, why the hell would you bother buying the add-on itself? Which brings us neatly to the end. Oddly, this appears to be one of those times where common knowledge is bang on the money. The 32X was, it's fair to say, akin to a lorry spilling its load over a busy motorway. That load is made up entirely of sloppy, stinky shits, and those stinky shits don't even take advantage of the upgraded sound chips and graphical processing power included within the... Oh wait, this has got away from me a bit. So was the 32X actually shit? Literally no. Figuratively, absolutely yes. We're not looking at Gizmondo or Virtual Boy levels of irredeemable awfulness, because Christ, Mortal Kombat 2 was a great game back in the day. And there's only been a handful of times across the gaming generations when the Death Star Trench Run has been so fucking cool, but good god, the 32X was a massive failure, and a failure for all the right reasons. It's genuinely sad Sega never learned anything from this cock-up, ruining things further by rushing to release a Saturn, and absolutely failing to explain to people how or why the Dreamcast was great. So thanks 32X, you killed video games. All of them.